Hey everybody, Eric Hayden here in the garden today. Have not done a video in a long time. Been up in Maryland the past month or so helping out with my parents through some surgery. So to be honest, I didn't have the time, and the roses with the heat and not spraying quite as much just didn't do that well. Today's video is going to show you how resilient roses are, why we grow roses, and you can grow these same roses in your own backyard and have beautiful blooms. So again, the point of the video today is your roses are going to go through some cycles. You know, hot weather, maybe especially rainy weather, you get a lot of black spot. They're not going to look perfect all the time, but this is why we grow them. This is Gemini, very good hybrid tea rose. The other one I want to show you is Let Freedom Ring. It's a nice red rose, big bloom. And again, I've been gone. This hasn't been covered. I don't know if the color of the red will show up as well with the recording I'm doing, but just a beautiful rose, a pinpoint center. I'm growing hybrid tea roses. You may see some other folks on YouTube that grow various roses. I pretty much all focus on hybrid teas. I have an old garden rose and a couple others, some climbing roses and so forth, but otherwise I'm all hybrid teas because I want this form, long stem, big bloom, pinpoint center for rose shows. That's what I'm growing for. This is Zach Noble's. This was a sport founded by Satish down in the Carolinas, Prabhu, and named, I think, after his grandson. But notice it's an orange coloring as opposed to the red. So just a beautiful rose, but a sport is a genetic mutation. For this cycle right now, the Zach Noble's is actually taller than Let Freedom Ring. Usually it's the other way around. The sport has a different coloring or something's different about it, and they're usually not as vigorous as the original. But again, on the right is the original Let Freedom Ring. That's the picture of the rose or the video I just showed you there. And notice how the sport is orange. We have a couple sports in the garden. Marlin's Day, sport of moonstone. We also have Folklore, which is the original, and the sport, which is European Touch. So blooms are looking good. Again, sparingly sprayed because I've been gone. We're very, very hot. My wife turned on the irrigation system a couple times a week, so watering is certainly key. This is probably about 9 feet tall. This is Veterans Honor. If you like a red rose, Let Freedom Ring is a good one, and I really, really like Veterans Honor. This is one of the smaller blooms on it right now, so I don't have the best example of a big bloom, but it's very prolific, and it takes a while to open up. So as a cut flower, here's a better example. Look how big that is. I'll try to zoom in. As a cut flower that you give to your significant other, your neighbors, your friends, it's going to last in the vase a long, long time. So looking really, really good. I want to show you a couple more bushes and then we'll wrap things up. You can see that one of my tasks will be deadheading. The other thing I want to mention is I usually do a light pruning. Certainly do a pruning in the late winter into the spring. Most folks do that. But I do another pruning in the late summer to prepare for rose shows. So a lot of times these will be much lower going into the fall. Traditionally, your best blooms, whether you're doing a rose show or not, are going to be in those cooler months. So for us, it's May and October here in the Carolinas. This is Yolande de Aragon. It is one rose that I do not have that is a hybrid tea. This is an old garden rose from 1843. Whole reason why I grow it is the smell. My son loves it. It's own root. I got this from my dad. I took a cutting and one of the successful ones took, and here it is. Beautiful pink bloom. I'm not a fan of this old garden style in terms of look. It also falls apart really quick in the vase, so you got to cut it when it's tight because it'll go from this to that very quickly. And it primarily blooms in the spring. If I was more, if I did that late summer pruning, the light pruning, it would have more blooms on it now. So it is a repeat bloomer, but just primarily spring and then a very light bloom in the fall, especially if you prune back. But it's not going to have multiple bloom cycles. So for example, in my garden, I have blooms from May into early November, maybe 4 or 5 flushes of blooms on something like an Alina. Yolande is usually just a twice a year bloomer. So that's a downside, but man, I wish you could smell this rose. It was one of the most fragrant roses. Old garden roses tend to be fragrant. Speaking of fragrance, I like red roses. Veterans Honors is good, but Mr. Lincoln, if you're a new rose grower, if you're an old rose grower, you don't have Mr. Lincoln in the garden, you need to get it. One of the taller roses in my garden, so it's going to grow very, very well for you. It's also going to be fairly disease resistant. I'm not saying you're not going to have any disease, but it's one of the last ones to get black spot. It'll get it. You can see a little bit there, but a nice red, and it's very, very fragrant. It'll last